Built to last. And I've structured mine in 2 parts. So MD's prerogative, I get 2 lots of 20 minutes instead of just the 1. What we see on a regular basis is that, and this is not just for accountancy practice, I'm sure you can relate to this yourselves, people will set up a business, they'll acquire a business, they'll take over a business, maybe they've been in this for a while, and what happens is they've got a certain amount of capacity that they can work to. And over time, that capacity starts to get taken up and taken up and taken up until they're burning out. Can anybody relate to that? Too many. And the sad reality is that that's actually a very inefficient capacity. They're working all the hours that they possibly can, but they're not necessarily earning something that justifies that. They're not getting the emotional rewards. They're not enjoying what they're doing. Pretty much feels like that. I've used this slide a few times, but ultimately, the consequences of being at this inefficient capacity is that it eats into your time. You're at the beck and call of client demands, in client meetings all the time, doing and double checking the client work. Your employees, if they're bringing you more problems than solutions, they're eating into your time. You run the risk of making errors, don't you, when this happens? Customer service goes out the window. You don't get a chance to spend with your best customers. Certainly don't get any chance to spend on working on the business. Keeping up to date with technology at the rapid rate that it changes these days becomes impossible, and even legislation, keeping up to that, is so difficult. The consequences in terms of income. Most people are earning poor profits. They're working a ridiculous amount of hours, but they've got poor profits, poor cash flow. Their employees, if they're not bringing solutions, if they're not giving you return on investment, are a cost, aren't they? You've got bills to pay. You're competing with cheap accountants out there, under fee pressure, fee disputes, giving out free advice, ultimately being taken for granted. And most importantly of all, it's not enjoyable, is it? What the hell is the point in having a business if you're not enjoying what you're doing? You might as well work behind a till in Tesco's and at least be having a nice natter with the next person. Don't get any enjoyment. Quite often, people feel that their employees don't care. They're quite happy to put their tools down at 5 or 3 or whatever it is time they finish, and quite often, that's it. They've done. You're the one that's still working the ridiculous amount of hours, getting hostility from clients because work's not being turned around quick enough or to their expectations. It puts strain on the relationships at home. It's unfulfilling, it's unrewarding, there's no life and no relaxing holidays. A business should work for you, not the other way around. What I'm doing in this session is I'm taking the stuff, this is not me telling you this ultimately, I'm taking lots of different contributions from all of the different entries, and I'm using what they're doing as a guide to what maybe some of the others in this room could be doing. So let's start with the business clarity. And we had, I think for this one, the most applications came in for business clarity. So let me share with you the common threads. That's ultimately what I'm going to be doing in this session. The common threads are that these people created connections. They connected with a practice growth expert, a coach, but other AVM members as well. They buddied up, people that they met at the masterclass, they keep in touch with, they bounce off each other. Act as a sounding board. More importantly still, it's, Jeanette raised this, we have one life. We have to make the most of it. Most of us go through life without feeling that we've got some kind of purpose, something greater than the money that we can earn to put into the bank account. Having a clearly defined purpose. Most of us feel, I don't think I've got a purpose in life. I believe that everybody has a true calling. And once you tap into that, once you discover that, you feel a sense of drive and enthusiasm that is something you've never, ever related to in the past. So much more than money can be an incentive for. So discovering that purpose is so important. From that, think about what are your personal goals, what are your aspirations, what do you want to achieve that's going to help you shift closer to that purpose. What's the business vision? That's got to be in line with it. And then the business goals. So this is what I've consistently seen the people who have entered for clarity, they've mentioned all of these different areas. Everything is in line. Everything's on the same target. So they're absolutely clear about what they want. Is that fly that was bugging me yesterday? It's on the screen now. They remove the restraints, and I saw this a few times. One restraint, of course, could be the self-limiting beliefs. I can't do this. I've seen those other practices doing this, but I can't do this. Or my clients aren't right, or I'm in the wrong area. But we know that that's a load of tosh, don't we? It doesn't matter where you are, and we've seen people from all sorts of corners of the UK that are making stuff happen. So it's overcoming those self-limiting beliefs. One of the applicants, this bloody fly, it's there. Anyway, I shan't allow it to distract me. One of the applicants was part of a franchise and felt that this was restricting from what they wanted to achieve. So they ended up taking 2 years to get out of that franchise to be able to then do the stuff that was in line with their purpose. So removing those restraints is important. Sometimes we've seen this. Now this didn't come through in any of the applications, but I'm doing some of these for completeness as well. They've had to part ways with their business partner because their personal ambitions were so diverse that they couldn't run a business together. Every single one of them said we've ditched the clients that just weren't right for us. Every single one of them says we've ditched the team members that weren't right for us. And I put this final one in for completeness because I've seen it in the past, not necessarily in the applications that came in, but actually sometimes the ball and chain that's around your neck could be your life partner. And I've seen people have to part ways with them because if your purpose, your passion are just so misaligned, then maybe your values aren't in line enough to be able to make what you really want to aspire to achieve in your life work. They've all applied the 80-20 principle. We heard Brian talking about that the majority of his income comes from the top, what was it? The top 79% of your income was coming from the top 10, was it? Or yeah. And it's a good average to say that 80% of your income comes from your top 20% of your clients. So a great way of freeing up time, a great example that they all gave is that we actually applied the 80-20 and we had the courage to ditch some of the people at the bottom end, the least profitable ones. So this isn't based on this isn't based on fee income, it's based on profitability. They take control, but at the same time they let it go. I think Val mentioned, or is going to mention at least, that actually sometimes you've got to stop doing a lot of stuff to be able to progress in the way that you want to. And I think many of us are probably control freaks. But being a control freak doesn't mean that you can't let stuff go. It just means about putting the standards in place to make sure that stuff happens to your high quality standards without you double checking everything. They have an absolute clear strategy in place. For most of us, that clear strategy, it might be in the form of the AVN roadmaps. It might be in the form of AVN excellence. But ultimately, they've got a plan, step by step. We love checklists because we can tick stuff off and say, that's done, we can move to the next one now. They focus on one step at a time. And they track their progress. They block out days in their diary, either half days, even if it's just an hour to start with a week. They block out that time so that they can't double book, they can't get that client their urgent appointment that wasn't that urgent. And they focus on working on their number one client, which is, of course, your own accountancy practice. And they break down that plan into bite-sized chunks. And those bite-sized chunks are going to be different for everybody, aren't they? Some of the members in this room might be described as the fast progressors, yeah? The cheaters, if you like, the people who are just taking giant leaps. But that's not the case for everybody. Some of us need to break that down into smaller chunks and take pigeon steps. But it doesn't matter. As long as progress is being made in a step-by-step way, doesn't matter whether you're giant leaps or pigeon steps. So all of these things are the most common threads that everybody who applied for clarity did. All of those things come into clarity, your planned success. So the next one was about the practice differentiation. Quick question for you. What's that represent? Disney. We know instantly, don't we, Disney? But we know beyond just Disney, don't we? We know that if it's Disney, the quality must be way up there. The customer service must be way up there. The whole experience, whether it's a film, whether it's going to the Disney parks, anything that's got Disney on it, you just know that it's going to be fantastic. And that's because they've built a brand. What's a brand? A brand is really that one association that you want somebody to make that really represents your vision, your values, your reputation, the quality. All of those things are really encompassed in that one. Whether it's a logo, whether it's a name, it doesn't matter. It's about the association that people have. And that's something that certainly all of those people who applied have got in common. They're building that one brand that represents everything about them. And then they represent that everywhere. Now, I often see accountants' websites and they all pretty much look and feel and say the same thing. We're proactive, we're forward-thinking, we're business advisors, we do compliance, we do payroll, we do audits, we do bookkeeping. And they all say exactly the same thing. Where's the differentiation there when the accountant up the road says exactly the same thing? So something I talk about, and I've seen this in the accountants who have applied, is that we should take a leaf out of Aristotle's book. He says that to communicate effectively, we should do it on 3 levels: ethos, logos, and pathos. And what they represent is ethos is really the credibility, building that, getting the trustworthiness across, your reputation, getting testimonials, all of those things that somebody's going to look at and think, yeah, I see that they're qualified, other people are saying how great they are, they must be good. That's the credibility factor. The logic is really the reasoning, the arguments, facts and figures. I think accountants are pretty good at that, aren't they? But really it's about the results, the outcomes. What can people expect from working with you? Not that just that they'll get their bookkeeping done, but what's the outcome? And pathos is really the emotion side, and that's where most people let their side down, because they're not sharing case studies where people have gone through this emotional journey from that pain to the gain that they're now experiencing. So what's your vision as well? What's your dream? What's your purpose, your passion? And we can see that in many of those applications that came in, their strap lines, their website, they don't talk about we do compliance, we do accounts, we do bookkeeping, any of that stuff. They talk about the outcomes. If you look at Val's, bloody thing. If we look at Val's website and the Numbers website, all of these different websites that come up, they're all speaking something very differently. This is Jay. Is Jay in the room, by the way? I know he's down to come, but I noticed that he's not here, so I'm not sure what happened there. But Jay Lawrence, his website is a dynamic tree that's built up from all of the testimonials and case studies. I say it's dynamic. He basically takes a risk that if anyone says anything bad about him, it's going to show on this front page. Because what happens, in fact I'll show it you in a second, is that it looks for the most common words used in all of the testimonials he's received, and it builds this dynamic tree. I think it's fantastic. So there are just a few examples. And forgive me, I've not had a chance to use everybody's example in every situation. They use collateral to represent that branding in different ways. So some of them have got their own books, some of them have got downloadables from their websites. They're positioning themselves very differently. They come across much more professional. It's not just about the looks, of course, it's about the content as well that's in there. And of course, that should extend beyond not just having those leaflets and those brochures. What's your shop window look like? What's that telling people, if it's a shop front type of setup? What are the banners saying that you might have? All of those different types of things. Values are incredibly important. Values really speak about, God, time's going fast, isn't it? Values really speak about who you are and the type of people that you work with. Values aren't a set of instructions for a team member to adhere to. Values are who you are, not who you should be. Values are pretty much set in stone. So Val talks about her values, MDH talk about what their values are. They're also talking about what their accreditations are, what their awards are, giving that credibility, that social proof that other people think you're great as well. Credibility in terms of featuring in the Business Owner's Guide. And this is Jay's. Let me just show you this. Anything that you click on, and the bigger the word, the more popular it was, it goes through, and every single testimonial that featured that word is then listed. So I talked about missions and purpose and straplines coming through. These are just a few of the ones that people have got on their websites that just speak more about what they do, the outcomes. They're striving to get social proof from other people. So if I use this example, I just typed in plumbers near me, there's 3 listed here, but one of them's got reviews. That gets my attention. I think, oh, the people have said how good they are. Nobody said how good these are, so that's the one I'm going to go for. And some of our members have all collected the different testimonials. They're on their website. That one, of course, an example I've already shown. Jackie asked people to give her a great testimonial or a review on Yell.com and already started getting results from that, didn't you, Jackie? Val, and I know Michael and various others have been keen on getting people to give Google reviews just so they stand out. Getting LinkedIn testimonials, all of those different places where people might check you out are incredibly important. And they've decided what their perfect client looks like. And they've decided what the leeway is going to be in terms of attracting, don't pit me, we'll have to make up for this, I'm way behind schedule. What the leeway is, and then what you're going to refer on. Who are you not going to work with? I talked about value alignment. It's my way or the highway. Some of them are saying you use either QuickBooks or Xero, or maybe we'll accept both of those. But if you don't want to change, then we'll give you another accountant. Our working hours are important to us. This is what we do. If you don't like that, go work with another accountant. It's my way or the highway. They create agreements. They don't just assume that the client expects what they're going to get or they're setting an expectation. They agree, using a fixed price agreement, what they will get, what they won't get. Jackie puts penalty notices in place. If you don't give us your books and records on time, we're going to charge you more. And they don't have their phones on out of hours. They don't give their mobile numbers out. You're not a plumber. If you want a mobile phone for the business, then that's fair enough. Maybe you charge a premium for the ones that you want to give 24-hour access to. They position themselves as experts. They know their sector or their situation. It doesn't have to be a niche in an industry. They know the mistakes that their clients make, and they know the challenges that they have. And then when they tell them, we know that these are the typical problems you have, they say, yeah, you know my business. They understand their goals. They seek to understand their goals, their ambitions, what their business potential is, and what their current situation is. They also, from that perfect client, decide who in their client base fits that. And then they work to upgrade them wherever possible. And the ones that they can't upgrade, they get rid of because they're not worth working with. So all of those things come into better positioning your firm and being different. And finally, on value, and this is much I'm going to go into on this particular session, value is really about adding that perception of value and adding more value to the value of your clients' businesses. They don't sell the pieces of the puzzle. That's not what they're really promoting. What they're promoting is the outcome. Maybe we take a bit of this, maybe we take a bit of that, we bundle them all together, and this is the packaged solution that we're offering you. I think it was Brian who says we used to sell, forgive me if I've got the wrong person, we used to sell 100 different products, now we just sell 3 solutions. Packaging those up into 3 different solutions. You need 3. People might want to choose between 1 and 2, but you need a third one that's an anchor point, that's way up there, so that they're much more likely to choose that middle option. They do top-down pricing. They don't prejudge their clients. They talk through every single thing that they do. Even if it's not right for that client now, it might be in the future, or that client might well talk about the stuff that you could do for other people when they're referring. They don't compete on price. This is a great quote that I came across. Cheap is never great. Great is never cheap. And they deliver high value in a low effort way. They tap into different tools and resources that are available out there so that it's not taking up their time. They can delegate sometimes producing this stuff to their team so that they're not the ones involved in doing that, but the perception is that they're delivering high value. They enhance the value perception by creating and mapping out what the full customer journey looks like. Now, this is for illustration purposes only, but for each of their clients, maybe they'll map out when we see somebody and maybe a new prospect or at the year end, what's the needs of that business? So they'll go through and they'll really understand what are the personal goals, the business goals, the current situation, all of those things. They'll take them on, they'll give them an agreement, they'll send out a welcome pack, they'll go through an onboarding process. When somebody visits their office, they make sure they've got maps, directions, a reserved parking space. Really, what I'm talking about here is mapping out what are the extra bells and whistles that you can do to wow anybody, in this case, visiting your office. When somebody comes for a meeting, they send out a meeting agenda in advance, setting an expectation. This is everything that we will do when you come here, including giving them advance notice that we're going to ask you who else that we can help. They'll go through things like benchmarking, trend analysis. They recognize that their clients can't do everything. So they spot opportunities that will relieve their client of some of the things that are burdening them, whether it's debt collection or whether it's something else that they can take off their hands. They're doing their clients a favor by talking about the extra stuff that you could do for them. They'll do what-if analysis. They'll take them through a proven methodology that's helping their business grow in a step-by-step way. In terms of records collection, we all heard Jackie talk about her calendar earlier, and this was pretty much almost a unique calendar for every single client, wasn't it? Fair enough, it was by year end. But this calendar, with the fly, it's got a few jokes in there, quotes of the day, a little bit of humor in there. It's got reminders in there, and it's got extra services that Jackie can do on every single page. Did you know? Did you know? So those things come together to create the customer journey. But of course, what wowed somebody yesterday is going to be the expected norm today, isn't it? So you've got to keep evolving that system, looking at it step by step. What else can we do that's going to wow them? So all of those things come together into adding value, that stage in the roadmap. So this inefficient capacity that once was, by ditching some of those poor clients, by raising the fees, working with better quality clients, that inefficient capacity starts to turn into a more manageable capacity. You don't want it at the top. You want a bit of flexibility, don't you? And all of that happens whilst your time is getting better. You're getting much more time for yourself. Your income is improving, and your level of happiness is improving as well. Now that begs one question. Once you've achieved that, how do you grow the practice further without that burdening your time again? So tune in to Built to Last Part 2 after lunch for the answer to that one. So this morning I shared with you Built to Last Part 1. And Built to Last really is about getting out of that unsustainable feeling that we're stressed, we're not happy, we're not earning enough, and we're working all hours. That is not sustainable. That's not really building a practice to last, is it? We looked at what are the ways, what are the things you can do to reduce that capacity. And we looked at basically where most of the people that have gone through clarity, positioning and value have achieved a more efficient capacity. But then how do you grow that firm in a way that's not going to add to that burden again and get you back to square one? So that's what we're going to look at now. And again, I'm taking the common threads from all of the applications that came in. So the first most common thread is the mindset of the individuals. Changing that mindset from an accountancy practice where they're buying me to an accountancy business where they're buying a solution. It doesn't matter who delivers that solution as long as that solution is delivered and you're delivering on the promise to the client. So that's number one. Their mindset is more accountancy business than accountancy practice. They recognize that they can't do everything, so they collaborate. They can't double check everything, but they can put standards in place to make sure that everything is to their high quality standard that they want themselves. To get help in terms of implementing this stuff, they've appointed either an AVN champion or even created a team. So Brian mentioned earlier his steering group. And they focus on developing scalability within the team and within systems. Their role, in order to bring on and develop their team, has to shift from client-facing and doing client work to being team-facing and team coaching and developing their team so that they can deliver on the promise of the business. And they do this with the aim of making themselves redundant, which sounds a little bit scary, doesn't it? But I think, as Michael says, quite often, the people in the team can deliver it just as good, and in some cases, maybe even better than you yourself. So aim to make yourself redundant, and then you've got a practice that's working for you and not the other way around. So let's just break that down. So taking the common threads in the customer committed team, they lead, they don't manage. Manage means to control people. People don't like to be controlled. People will do what they're told to do if they're controlled, and they don't use their initiative, they don't think outside the box. If you lead, you've inspired them with your purpose. They're committed to that purpose. They'll do whatever it takes to achieve that purpose because they believe in it, they buy into it. They're part of a team themselves. It's not a boss and staff. You know I hate the word staff, despite hearing it repeatedly this morning. Because a staff represents us and them, doesn't it? It's a team. We're all in this together. And clients can be served by their team. And they position their team highly. And they trust them whilst they're on holiday. So developing a team of people. To develop a great team, you have to develop a great culture. A culture that reflects your values. It's got a sense of achievement in there. It's got the beliefs, behaviors. All of these things are what reflect the type of culture that you want to get in place. So in terms of achievement, what does that mean? Well, having personal one-page plans in place so people can see exactly what's expected of them and they know they're achieving what you would like them to. Having accountabilities in place. I've put personal one-page plans twice. That's because they're important. And they celebrate the wins, as the MDH team did from winning the Firm of the Year award last year. They celebrated by taking the entire team to Disneyland. Having a sense of fairness, and I don't just mean in terms of a fair salary, but actually creating a great environment to work in. One that's funny. As Jeanette was talking about, we have to be happy in work, otherwise we're going to be miserable gits, and that's a true reflection as to the type of work we're going to create and work on, isn't it? So, and agreeing a work schedule. Some of us are more results-based than others. Some people say, yeah, you've got to work from 9 and then stop at 5, but what does that matter if they've achieved very little in that space of time? At the same time, does it matter where they are, when they work, as long as the stuff gets done? So it's up to each individual how flexible they are. Most people, one of the common threads I saw is that actually family comes first. We'd rather you were at your kid's sports day than here slaving away, for example. A sense of camaraderie. As I say, most people are much more motivated by a common purpose than they are by a bonus or financial incentives. If the values are in line, they're going to be inspired by your purpose, your vision. As I've mentioned team already, I can't mention that enough. They have weekly team meetings as well. Most of these were actually around improvement. So as I mentioned later on with the systems, they get their team involved in saying, what were the things that happened to me over the weekend that were good customer service experiences and were bad experiences? And they look at how can they make their own systems better as a result, getting the team involved in that stuff. They only employ the right people. A CV is just one very small aspect of finding the right person, isn't it? The mindset is incredibly important. The values, the beliefs, the attitude, and then, as Michael talked about earlier as well, the behavioural characteristics. Is somebody big picture detail? Are they more of an analyst, numbers, people-oriented? All of those different combinations. And actually, what came through as well is that they fire fast. If they've got the people that are dragging them and holding them back, they'll get rid of them. And they'll hire slow and find the right person. They'll play people to their strengths rather than trying to mold somebody to, this is how we've always done it. If someone's got more sales characteristics or more people skills or more technical skills, then they'll play them to those strengths rather than say, no, you can't do that. You need to be over here in this box. But they'll try and employ people with a full range of skills so that they're complementing every single one of those characteristics as a business. They invest in their team, not just from a technical skills training point of view, but also from a soft skills point of view. They'll spend quality time with them, going through a career development review, finding out what their team's aspirations are, what are their personal goals. Are they in line with the practice, or can they be a stepping stone to helping them achieve their personal goals? They encourage them to, up the initiative ladder, to think for themselves more, to make the right types of decisions. And many of them send their team along to the AVN Masterclass or other AVN events by way of inducting new team members or getting existing team members understanding what everything's all about, because it's difficult to go back after something like that and try and reconvey it to your team, isn't it? They shift from this everything centres around either one or two or three partners with the team just supporting them to a more client manager type setup. As I say, their role, they're client managers, are having the meetings, they're producing the work, they're seeing the prospects, and they're bringing on new business. The role of the partner, all the partners shift to coaching and supporting the team so that they can do that, so that as the capacity of each team member, of each client manager grows and expands, then they can just expand the team to accommodate that. And these can just support and coach those people whilst they're growing and scaling that business. They outsource much more. Many were outsourcing things like the telephone answering service, tapping into experts out there that can help them and bring that support to them, tapping into things like getting the payroll outsourced or their bookkeeping, maybe even doing the social media or content marketing by other people, and outsourcing even lining up great client meetings like Patrick does, or prospective client meetings. By outsourcing, you're freeing up your team to do the really important stuff, aren't you? So all of those things come together in terms of gearing. And gearing, as Steve mentioned earlier, gearing really is about leveraging your time through your team, through outsourcing, through being much more productive as a business. So the next one, and these are basically part one and part two when it comes to scaling your business. The next one's about consistently high standards, isn't it? I think it was Brian who mentioned that he wants to make everybody in his team dispensable, not reliant on one single person. I think his comment, forgive me if it wasn't you, Brian, but I think his comment was, I want to create a business that's going to go beyond me, that I can leave as a legacy, not one that's ultimately a cause of death. So they put the systems in place that reflect every single aspect of the areas that a business needs not just in terms of operational, but the finance, the marketing, the people, all of those different areas. They get their team involved, as I mentioned earlier, customer service experience. It's the wooden Disney way, or it's the beyond the numbers way, the MDH way. It's not about what experiences other people have got. Now, if they've got great experiences, then they share them. And if you choose to add them into the systems for your business, it's a reflection of you as the owner, then that's your choice, and everybody will follow that system rather than everybody doing it their own way. They identify bottlenecks and then they change the systems to streamline them, and ultimately they're striving to work smarter, not harder. They get an external perspective. People like Michael Pipe, who do a mystery shopper, a first impressions exercise, to give you that external perspective on this is what a prospective client will experience when they look at your website, when they phone your office, when they visit. And they use the Net Promoter Score as well, just to find out what their customers feel about them. So for example, Jay from Lawrence & Co., he shows on his website their average Net Promoter Scores for the month and for the year, so that their customers can see. By getting these things in place, they're able to take relaxing holidays without taking their phone with them. And they're reducing the number of hours that they're working in a week, sometimes bit by bit, sometimes, right, okay, I'm just going to take the plunge and reduce it down to a 4-day week or a 3-day week, and in some cases, a 1-day week. And they're embracing technology. So some of the firms have got live chat on their website. They're using e-commerce to take money, like Go Cardless. They're using CRMs like Accountancy Manager. They're managing their projects using software such as Trello. They're using client portals like Nimbus. They're using Zoom, that's been mentioned a few times, I think this morning, to have meetings that can just be done just like that, can't they? But it's a face-to-face, you can see that body language. They're using document management systems like Dropbox, and they're using internal team collaboration apps like Slack. Just a couple of examples, this is the numbers. They've got the ability, in this case it says leave a message, that's because I went on it just after 5 o'clock. During the daytime, it was a live chat with somebody who was looking after that, so you could type in whatever message you wanted. And lots of people just like to send you a quick message and get a response straight away, don't they? This is another example from First Option. They've got their client portal, so their website is designed for a prospect to see, but ultimately if a client comes on there, then they can access the client portal straight from that. So all of these things then culminate into automation, creating a practice that is ultimately scalable. So you've created your lean, mean, scalable machine as your practice. Now you need to feed it with more customers, don't you? And this is where high profile comes in. This is about becoming highly sought after, so that you're not the one that's striving to get the business in, they're approaching you. A few years ago, Google did some research that basically they advertise as being called ZMOT. If you type ZMOT into Google, you'll find that. It stands for zero moment of truth. In other words, what does it take before somebody will actually want to buy from you? And what they discovered is that on average, so this is an average, people want to get to know you for around 7 hours before they'll be prepared to buy, assuming what you're selling is something worthwhile to them. 7 hours. Over 11 touch points and 4 different locations. So locations might be physical face-to-face, it might be that they read something online. They will build up the know, like, and trust factors before they'll be prepared to buy from you. So great ways of doing that are to have your own book. That's 4 hours out of that 7 that we just mentioned. 4 hours of reading, getting to know you. Delivering presentations, we've heard about that this morning, the impact that that can have. Getting on video, so here's Derek. And Derek's got these videos on his website and on YouTube. People can come across those, maybe they'll do a search and they'll stumble across that video. Same with Stephen from Numbers UK. Creating these videos means that people can type in a problem into Google and chances are your video, if it answers that problem, is going to answer that query for them, which means they start to know you. Other ways, George's Facebook page and Michael's Facebook page, these are just different locations, if you like, dropping out articles out there, getting in front of people. They capture email addresses so they can build on those touch points and start drip feeding advice to people through emails. So Wood & Disney, for example, in fact, lots of websites coming up where they've just got a means of capturing a name and address in exchange for downloading something or getting onto a newsletter. Lots of examples there. They produce regular articles as well that they put in different places, whether it's LinkedIn, their website, preferably all of these places. Articles that are designed to help people, give them advice on stuff. And they get their articles on other people's sites. Because the more different locations your articles are, the much more likely you are to get that top of the page in Google. Because Google's finding you in lots of different places. And a great show, I mean, Fiona's mentioned the parliamentary review. I know there's a few people, I think Val as well, posting articles on Chamber. Am I getting confused there? No, somebody's mentioned that to me, that they get articles on Chambers as well. But ultimately, getting those articles in different locations means you're much more likely to show up on page 1 of Google. So if I get a recommendation, you really ought to work with Michael Hem at MDH, I'm going to type into Google Michael Hem. I'm not going to type MDH. I'm going to type in somebody's name. So where do you feature when somebody types your name into Google right now? Starfish had a mission to get, the front page of Google and currently come up second for searching for their mission, which is accountants for women in business. Now, getting articles out there, getting all this posting out there, getting on stage, doing videos isn't about you being in the spotlight. Look at me, look at me, look at me. It's not about getting sales. It's not about putting a sales pitch at the end of all of these things. It's about you not being in the spotlight, but shining that light for other people. Shining the light on great strategies, ideas, possibilities, help for people in a giving way. I can't remember who it was that mentioned, ultimately we're here to give, and as a natural consequence, we tend to get back off the back of that. And the people who are putting this stuff out there tend to, as a nice consequence, start getting inquiries. That stuff you talked about, I'd love for you to help me with that. They stretch outside of their comfort zone. Val talked about just getting on stage and just doing it. And there are many others in the room that have done exactly that same thing. When we step outside of the comfort zone, it's the scariest thing ever, but actually that's where the magic starts happening. The more we do it, the more we get used to it, the more our comfort zone expands into that realm. And of course, they measure the effectiveness of the stuff that they're doing. You're going to have to dismiss that one, Andrea, sorry. So all of these things then culminate into becoming sought after. And that's in profile. Finally, changing lives. Now, we've heard lots of great stuff. Wood & Disney won the Changing Lives for the great stuff that they're doing. What we tend to find, though, is many people who start a business or are in the early stages or in that overcapacity element can't really think of giving stuff back to other people. It's just difficult. And if you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, actually some people are way down here. I need to feed my family. I need to, get the foundations in place first. I can't even think about giving back. But ultimately, they reach a point where they can start to give back. So what was common amongst, I think, all of the applications for changing lives was that they've aligned themselves with the global goals. Whether it's one thing that was important to them, or whether it was multiple items that's important to them, whether it's letting their clients choose what's important to them, it doesn't matter. They've aligned themselves with the global goals. They've chosen a channel. It doesn't have to be B1G1. I particularly like B1G1 because they vet the process to make sure 100% of the donation goes to exactly where they said it will go. So I'm a huge advocate of B1G1, but of course it doesn't matter who they are. It's about finding a channel that's going to help you do that. I think all of them would also align themselves with Steve's Get and Give $1 million, which is really just attaching the business advisory that you do to that cause. Now, my version of this photo isn't as good a crisper quality as yours, Steve, so apologies for that, but this was Wooden Disney's wall, and I think that just really speaks volumes to any client, prospective client that comes in, doesn't it? Michael, of course, it's not just about the business one as a collective, but actually what are your personal passions as well, and what are you doing to raise awareness of that? And I know this is particularly important to Michael, the Stroke Association. What I did find as well as a common thread was that people set giving goals as a priority over their turnover goals, their profit goals. And then they created a practice that was going to make that happen for them. They're finding that it's inspiring their team because their team are striving towards something much bigger than themselves, and therefore they're much more committed, they're much more engaged. And in terms of changing lives as well, they're connecting their clients up. It's connecting them up so that they can bounce off each other, whether it's a BBF, whether it's a mastermind type thing, whether it's just making their connection, say, this guy can help you out with that, he's one of our clients, I highly recommend them. And as I say, their straplines, their missions, all are much beyond just crunching numbers for people. They're giving hope to their clients. That came up earlier as well, didn't it? In fact, a story that springs to mind was in Jackie's entry. She mentioned that one of her clients wasn't a very good payer. Now, that could be grounds for sacking, but actually she got in touch. I'm not suggesting she's the only one that's ever done this. She got in touch with that client and says, can we help you? So she worked with that client to improve their business, and he was incredibly grateful. I'm assuming it was a he. And now he's a great payer. So actually she gave hope. And another thing I'm seeing as well is all of this stuff that we've talked about, they're helping their clients overcome exactly the same things. So getting better clarity in place, looking at your client base, getting rid of the lower 80% or the lower 20%, whatever it is, better positioning themselves, adding much more value, getting the team on board, getting systems in place, raising their profile, and of course, finally, giving back and changing lives. All of these form the AVN roadmaps that we're helping people through. And as a consequence of achieving those roadmaps, that planned way of achieving great success within your practice, people are striving towards getting AVN excellence in place because throughout this entire process, they're chipping away at those standards. But something I'd like to just point out as well, as much as this is generally represented in a straight line, starting with getting the foundations in place from clarity and working up, it's not a linear process, it's an ongoing process. Because there's nothing to stop you going around here and thinking, right, okay, now I've just got A clients. Well, if you're applying 80-20 to that set of A clients, you're still going to find that maybe 80% of your income's still coming from 20% of them. You can continue to refine things all the way around and maintain that AVN excellence standard as well. So at the beginning, I talked about reducing that capacity from red to green, but ultimately by putting the foundation in place to scale your practice, you can bring that down even further so that you've got time to spend with your family, with your friends, and on your health, whilst all of these things start to increase and improve along the way. Thank you very much.